Somewhere in your life right now, there is a change you already know that you need to make. Maybe it's small, maybe it's just leaving a conversation 10 minutes earlier than you normally would. Or maybe it's enormous, like leaving a marriage, leaving a company, leaving an entire way of living that stopped fitting you a long time ago. You know it needs to happen. And this isn't just an idea you have in your head, you know it in your body. And every single time you get close to actually doing it, something stops you. Tightening, a hesitation, a quiet little voice that says, if you do this, something bad will happen. You're being selfish. You'll hurt someone. I want to talk about that voice and whatever variation you have of it, because here's the thing I want you to understand the most. That voice is not yours. It got installed by other people who, most of whom aren't even in the room anymore. Some of them moved to the other side of the country. Some of them you haven't spoken to in 20 years. Some of them have passed away, and yet you're still asking them for permission. And that's what I want to talk about. Noticing that your life is being run by rules you never actually agreed to, rules that got installed before you were old enough to agree to them, and then slowly and on purpose, taking your authority back. I call it conscious disobedience, and this is the underlying thread to all of my work. I believe it might be one of the most important things a human being can do, not just for their own life, but for everyone, because the effects ripple out. Now, let me give a little bit more context, because I don't want you to leave here like angry at your parents. That's not what this is. So every one of us got shaped, starting from before we had words, before we could talk, by the environment that we were born into. We watched what happened when we were fully ourselves, and we watched what happened when we made ourselves smaller, and we ran the calculations. Every kid runs the calculations in their head, whether they realize it or not. The question underneath was always the same one. Which version of me is safe to show here? And whatever the answer came back as, that's the version we became, not for a day, for years, until the version we became to stay safe got so familiar that we forgot it was ever a performance. We just started calling it me. I really need you to understand that this is one of the most intelligent things your mind and your nervous system will ever do. A kid who cannot read the room and adjust gets pushed out of the group that they quite literally need to survive. So we all learned it, every one of us. We figured out what to show and what to hide, and we built a self that could belong. Here's the part that makes it hard to see clearly. Most of us didn't obey or shrink or change because someone was cruel to us. We obeyed and changed because someone loved us. The rules were handed to us by a parent who was scared for us and wanted us safe, or from a teacher who genuinely believed what they were teaching. It could have been a community or a society that thought it was handing us the map to a good life. It could have been a family whose deepest wish in the world was to keep us close. Those people were not villains. Most of them were doing the best they could with what got handed to them, which is exactly why this is so hard. If your cage had been built by an enemy, you could fight the enemy and walk right out, right? But your cage is built by people you love, and you probably still love them, right? Some small part of you wants their approval more than you would ever say out loud. You obeyed them because you loved them. Now, if you found your way here, you've probably already noticed this on some level. You've read the self-improvement books. Maybe you've done a version or two of some kind of therapy, some part of the whole wellness circuit. So you know your patterns. You can name them. You can probably trace every single one of them back to the instant it got installed. And you've probably run into something very frustrating. None of that has fixed it, right? Maybe you still hesitate in the meeting where your clear opinion is the entire reason you're in the room, or you still stay in the situation that you know you're supposed to leave, right? You still soften your voice at the precise moment. Your voice is what's needed. And then afterward, you can explain it to yourself with total accuracy, exactly what just happened and where it came from. And it doesn't move a thing. For a lot of people, that turns into its own private despair. You did everything right. You understand yourself better than almost anyone you know. And the pattern is still running underneath all of the understanding, completely unbothered by it. There's a reason for that. Your mind runs on two levels and they do not play by the same rules. So there's the conscious mind. That's the part of you that's listening to me right now. It's logical, it's analytical, it's verbal, it thinks in full sentences. That's where insight lives. That's the part that reads the book and goes to therapy. That part gets it, right? And then there's everything else, and that is stored in your subconscious. That's where every pattern you have got installed, and it's where they're still running. It doesn't speak English in the same way we do. It speaks in pictures, in emotions, in sensation. It's what something feels like in your gut, right? You cannot argue with it. It doesn't care what you understand. It only responds to what feels true. So you can spend 20 years telling yourself all the right things. I am enough. I belong. I'm safe. I'm wealthy. And you can still feel nothing shift underneath, right? It's because you've been sending those affirmation letters to the wrong address. So they land in the conscious mind and they never make it downstairs to the floor where the actual problem lives. And here's the worst part, because your subconscious is what's running everything. So when you try to input new ways of being into your conscious mind, you will ultimately reject them and you will actually end up reinforcing the pattern. But that's a different video. So let me tell you about someone, because the story is such a great example of what I'm talking about. A few years ago, I worked with a founder in his 40s. He built his company from absolutely nothing. Smart, accomplished, the guy everyone in his world went to when it mattered. And he came to me because he could not stop editing himself in his own board meetings. He would prepare, he would know his position. And then the moment when it actually counted, he would soften it. He would pile on the qualifiers. He once let a decision that should have taken only a few seconds drag out for another full quarter, because saying it plainly felt in his body like something terrible was about to happen. And so he'd stop himself. Now he'd done the work. He could tell me exactly what this was. All right. His father had been a man who did not tolerate being challenged. And so this founder had learned very, very young that having a clear, strong opinion in that house was something you paid for. But here's the thing. His father was not in the boardroom. His father had not been in any room this man had walked into in over a decade. Nobody at that table asked him to shrink. They admired him. In fact, they were waiting for him to just say what was on his mind. The environment that trained that particular pattern was gone, long gone. And yet the pattern was still running, because the part of him that had learned to hesitate and soften, that part was still 7 years old. And that little kid would take over. And he had never once been told that the room had changed. He was still crouched at a table that doesn't exist anymore, bracing against a man who isn't there anymore. For 30 years, that kid had shown up to every single meeting and done his job, and in his mind, he kept everyone safe. What that man needed was not more insight. He had enough insight. What he needed was for that 7-year-old to hear, in the language that only a 7-year-old actually understands, you did your job. You did it so well, and you don't have to protect us anymore. These people aren't him. You can rest now. 2 sessions, and he stopped editing himself. And he didn't decide to stop. He didn't force himself to stop. The part that had been doing the editing simply wasn't in charge anymore. Now, here's where I want to talk about healing. And I also want to look at what the word rebellion even means in this context. When people hear rebellion in a talk about childhood patterns, they reach for the obvious version. Rebel against your parents, rebel against your teacher, your coach, rebel against authority and the system that shaped you. Those people out there did this to me, and now I can fight back. But that's not what I'm talking about, not even a little bit. Because the people who installed those rules, most of them aren't enforcing anything anymore. A lot of them have moved on. Some have passed on. And plenty of them, if you sat them down today, would be genuinely baffled to hear that they did any of this at all. So who's enforcing the rules now? You are. You are. Well, a part of you is the part of you that ran that calculation decades ago about which version of you was safe to show. That part never got the memo that the environment changed. It's still running the exact same protection program in places that don't need it, around people who never once earned that kind of caution. Every time you soften your voice for no reason, that part is on the job. Every time you swallow the ask, it's on the job. Every time you stay somewhere you already knew that you should leave, that part is doing the thing it has always done. And hopefully this isn't you, but just in case you had this flash through your mind, I want to stop you right now. If you hear this and you think, okay, that's fine, I'll fight that part, I'll overpower it, I'll shame it, I'll get it to shut up somehow. That does not work. It has never once worked because that part, the 7-year-old and the founder and whatever age it is inside you, that part is not your enemy. It is a small, exhausted, fiercely loyal protector who has been standing guard for decades at a post that everyone else abandoned years ago. And when you try to fight it or shut it up, you are doing to it the exact same thing that it went through in the first place. You will carry out inside your own head the entire dynamic that created the pattern in the first place. You cannot bully yourself into freedom. People have tried forever. All it does is install a new guard. The real rebellion is to turn toward that part, to face the piece of you that's been keeping you small, and to say, not as an argument, not as a correction, but with a very specific quality of attention. I see you. I see what you've been doing, and I know why. I'm here now, and I'll be in charge. You can rest. For your conscious mind, that sounds rather small, right? But for your subconscious, that is absolutely enormous, because every part of you that's been keeping you small is a part that at some point kept you loved, kept you safe, kept you in the room. And a part like that does not loosen or relax when you fight it. It loosens when it gets the one thing it never got the first time around: to be seen and to be heard, without judgment, without demand, without being told to hurry up and be different. That reception is the thing that tells the guard it's finally safe to stand down. Insight won't do it. Neither will willpower, not even 20 years of the right affirmations. That's why I call it conscious disobedience and not just rebellion. Rebellion is loud and needs an enemy. And what I'm describing is the ongoing, unglamorous, deeply personal practice, just noticing where the old rules are still running, and then one part at a time, letting your protectors lay down a job they've been doing for way too long. You don't need a dramatic blow up. You don't need a big speech to your parents. That is what actually can change your life. So let me tell you what this looks like from the inside, because everything I've said so far is theory, and I want you to know what to actually watch for, because it almost never shows up as a breakthrough. There's no lightning bolt. There's not a dramatic before and after. What people tell me is stuff like this: a situation that would have wrecked them a month ago is suddenly something they just handled without even thinking about it. A person whose approval used to be the focus of their day has drifted from the center of their life out to the edge of it. A decision that they've been circling for months just comes to them on some random Tuesday morning like it was never even a big deal. The monitoring that used to hum underneath every single meeting goes quiet. The choices they used to agonize over start to feel almost boring. The body unclenches in places that they never knew were clenched. They speak and they don't shrink, and they don't even notice that they didn't. It's only later driving home that they realized, oh, I just said the thing. That's what this actually feels like. You don't wake up to fireworks and a whole transformed life like all at once. You just wake up and you are different. And that difference quietly starts changing every single room you walk into. And that part is important because we talk about healing like it's a private project, like it's something you do for yourself on your own time in a room with the door shut. And I don't think it's private at all. Every system you belong to, every family, every company, every culture has some investment in you staying the exact size it assigned you. Again, usually this is not out of malice. Remember, the people who handed you the rules, God handed those same rules by someone else first. Most of them are just faithfully running the program that was run on them. So when you disobey, when you take your authority back and start actually using your voice, your vision, the specific thing that only you can do, you are not only healing yourself, you are breaking a chain. You are standing in front of everyone watching you and showing them that it's possible, that it's survivable, that the love you were so terrified of losing, it will either grow to meet the real you, or it reveals that it was never quite the love you thought it was. That is what this looks like at the level of the world. It's not just defiance. It's not a performance. It's just the quiet, daily persistence on being authentic. And when enough people do that in their work, in their marriages, in the ordinary rooms they walk into every day, the kind of companies that get built, the kind of families that get raised, the kind of world that becomes possible, all of that changes. Your healing was never a private matter. It ripples out because in the end, healing is just the restoration of love. Love that comes from choice instead of fear. Presence that comes from being whole instead of in need. That is the rebellion I'm inviting you into. And it starts every time by turning toward yourself.